The river stretched before me like a ribbon of glass, shimmering under the late summer sun, but my heart was a storm. I stood on the rickety wooden dock, my hiking boots scuffing against the splintered planks, and tried to ignore the way Lily's laughter echoed in my chest. She was already in the canoe, her dark hair catching the light as she waved me over, her grin wide enough to break me. "Come on, Emma, don't chicken out now," she called, her voice bright but laced with something sharper, something that had been building between us for weeks. I was 28, she was 29, and we'd been best friends since college, two girls who'd shared dorm rooms, secrets, and too many late-night talks to count. But this trip, this 5-day paddle down the Deschutes River in Oregon, felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. I climbed into the canoe, my hands trembling as I gripped the paddle. Lily's eyes met mine, and for a split second, the world went quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, just her. I'd always known she was beautiful, but now, with the river stretching out and the wilderness closing in, I couldn't look away. Her short, tousled hair framed her face, and her brown eyes held a spark that made my stomach twist. "Ready for an adventure?" she asked, her voice softer now, like she was testing me. I nodded, but my mind screamed, "Ready for what?" We pushed off, the canoe gliding smoothly over the water. The Deschutes was wild but not unforgiving, its current steady but strong, much like Lily herself. She'd planned this trip meticulously, maps, gear, meals, all of it her idea. "We need this," she'd said a month ago, her voice urgent over the phone. "Just you and me, no distractions." I'd agreed, thinking it was just another one of her spontaneous plans, but now with every paddle stroke, I felt the weight of something unspoken. The first day was easy. We paddled for hours, the river carrying us through pine forests and rocky cliffs. Lily talked nonstop about her job as a graphic designer, about the stars we'd see tonight, about how she'd always wanted to do this. I listened, letting her voice anchor me, but my thoughts kept drifting to the way her hands moved, strong and sure, as she steered us through a gentle rapid. "Emma, you're quiet today," she said around noon, as we pulled the canoe onto a gravelly shore for lunch. She handed me a sandwich, her fingers brushing mine, and I swear the air crackled. "Just taking it all in," I lied, my voice catching. I was taking her in every glance, every laugh, every moment she leaned closer than necessary. I'd spent years convincing myself my feelings for Lily were just friendship, just admiration. But out here, with no one else around, the truth was clawing its way out. We ate in silence, the river's hum filling the space between us. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, her profile sharp against the green of the forest. She was different out here, freer maybe, or more herself. I wondered if she felt it too, this pull, this ache that had been growing since we were 19 and sharing a dorm room, whispering about our dreams until dawn. That night, we set up camp on a small clearing by the river. The stars were obscene, a million pinpricks of light against a velvet sky. Lily built a fire, her movements practiced, and I watched her like she was the only thing that mattered. "Remember that time we snuck onto the roof of the library?" she said, poking the fire with a stick. Sparks flew upward and she grinned. "We thought we'd get arrested, but you just kept laughing." "You were the one who brought the wine," I shot back, trying to keep my voice light. "I was just following your bad influence." She laughed, and it was the kind of sound that could unravel me. "You love my bad influence," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. The firelight danced across her face, and I felt my breath hitch. "Do I?" I asked, half joking, half hoping. Her smile faltered just for a second, and then she looked away, tossing the stick into the fire. "You tell me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to say it then. I wanted to tell her that I'd been in love with her for years, that every touch, every shared glance, had been building to this moment. But fear clamped down on my chest, and I stayed silent, letting the crackle of the fire fill the void. The next morning, the river felt different, wilder, like it knew something we didn't. We packed up and pushed off, the current pulling us faster now. Lily was quieter, her usual chatter replaced by long stretches of silence. I caught her glancing at me, her expression unreadable, and it made my heart race. Around midday we hit our first real rapid. The water churned white and angry, and Lily's voice cut through the roar. "Paddle hard, Emma. We've got this." I dug in, my arms burning as we navigated the rocks. The canoe rocked violently, water splashing over the sides, but Lily was steady, her commands sharp and sure. We made it through, soaked and breathless, and she turned to me with a grin that lit up the world. "You're a badass," she said, laughing, and I felt my cheeks flush. "You're not so bad yourself," I managed, my voice shaky. For a moment we just sat there, the canoe drifting, our eyes locked. The river rushed around us, but it was like we were the only two people in the universe. Then she reached out, her hand resting on mine, and my heart stopped. "Emma," she said, her voice low, "there's something I need to tell you." I held my breath, waiting, hoping, terrified. But before she could say another word, the canoe hit a rock, jolting us forward. The moment shattered, and we scrambled to steady ourselves, the river demanding our attention. That night, as we sat by another fire, the weight of her unsaid words hung between us. I wanted to ask to push, but something held me back. Instead, I watched her, memorizing the way the firelight played across her face, knowing that whatever happened on this river, it would change us forever. The river grew wilder on the third day, its current pulling us through narrow canyons where the walls rose steep and shadowed. I paddled mechanically, my muscles aching, but my mind was elsewhere, in Lily's hand on mine, on the words she hadn't said. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks, and I couldn't tell if I was terrified or exhilarated. Lily was quieter now, her usual fire dimmed. She steered the canoe with precision, but her eyes kept drifting to the horizon, like she was searching for something. I wanted to ask what was wrong, what she'd been about to say yesterday, but every time I opened my mouth the words stuck. We stopped for lunch on a rocky outcrop, the sun high and unrelenting. Lily handed me a water bottle, her fingers lingering just a second too long. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but probing. "Yeah," I lied, taking a sip to avoid her gaze. "Just tired." She didn't buy it. She never did. "Emma, you've been weird since we started this trip. What's going on?" I froze, the bottle halfway to my lips. Her eyes were on me, steady and searching, and I felt exposed, like she could see every secret I'd buried. "I'm fine," I said, but my voice cracked, betraying me. She stepped closer, her boots crunching on the gravel. "You're not fine. Talk to me." I wanted to. God, I wanted to spill everything, how I'd loved her since we were 19, how every laugh, every touch, had been a quiet torture. But the words felt too big, too dangerous. What if she didn't feel the same? What if I lost her? "I'm just overwhelmed," I said finally, gesturing vaguely at the river, the cliffs, the vastness of it all. "This place, it's a lot." She studied me for a moment, then nodded, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. We ate in silence, the river's roar a constant reminder of how small we were. When we pushed off again, the tension between us was palpable, a thread stretched tight, ready to snap. That afternoon, the river threw us into chaos. A rapid came out of nowhere, the water churning like a living thing. Lily shouted commands, her voice sharp over the roar, but the current was too strong. The canoe tipped, and before I could react, we were in the water. It was cold, shockingly so, and the current yanked me under. I thrashed, my lungs burning, until I felt a hand grab my arm. "Lily." She pulled me to the surface, her grip fierce, and we swam for the shore, coughing and gasping. We collapsed on the rocky bank, soaked and shivering. The canoe was gone, swept downstream along with most of our gear. For a moment we just lay there, catching our breath, the reality of our situation sinking in. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, her voice hoarse. She was sitting up now, her wet hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide with worry. I nodded, my teeth chattering. "Yeah, you." She didn't answer, just pulled me into a hug. It was sudden, desperate, her arms tight around me, and I felt my heart lurch. "I thought I lost you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You didn't," I said, my voice muffled against her shoulder. "I'm right here." She pulled back, her hands still on my arms, her eyes searching mine. "Emma, I can't lose you. Not ever." The words hit me like a wave, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. There was something raw in her voice, something that mirrored the ache in my chest. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the cold was creeping in and we needed to move. We salvaged what we could, a few supplies that had washed ashore, and set up a makeshift camp. The fire was small, barely enough to keep us warm, but Lily sat close, her shoulder brushing mine. The silence between us was heavy, filled with everything we weren't saying. "I'm sorry," she said finally, staring into the flames. "This trip was supposed to be perfect." "It's not your fault," I said, my voice soft. "And it's not over yet." She turned to me, her eyes glinting in the firelight. "There's something I need to tell you, Emma. I should have said it yesterday, but I got scared." My heart pounded, but before I could respond, a rustling in the bushes made us both freeze. The wilderness was alive around us, and we weren't alone. The rustling grew louder and my pulse spiked. Lily grabbed my hand, her grip tight, and we stared into the darkness beyond the firelight. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. A moment later, a deer stepped into the clearing, its eyes glinting in the fire's glow. Relief flooded through me, and I let out a shaky laugh. Lily's shoulders relaxed, but she didn't let go of my hand. Her fingers were warm against mine, and I felt that familiar pull, the one that had been tugging at me since we started this trip. "False alarm," she said, but her voice was still low, like she didn't want to break the moment. She looked at me, her thumb brushing lightly over my knuckles, and I swear my heart stopped. "Lily," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What were you going to say?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite read, fear, maybe, or hope. "Not here," she said finally. "Let's get through tonight. Tomorrow, I promise." I wanted to push, to demand answers, but the exhaustion in her face stopped me. We curled up by the fire, sharing a single sleeping bag to stay warm. Her body was close, her breath steady against my shoulder, and I lay awake, my mind racing with possibilities. The next morning we woke to a world of mist. The river was shrouded, the air cool and heavy. Our canoe was gone, but we still had our paddles and a small backpack of supplies. Lily studied the map, her brow furrowed. "There's a ranger station a few miles downstream," she said. "If we hike along the bank, we can make it by tonight." I nodded, trusting her completely. We set out, the river our guide, its steady roar a reminder of how quickly things could change. The hike was grueling, the terrain rocky and uneven, but Lily kept us moving, her determination a lifeline. As we walked, she started talking again, her voice lighter now, like she was trying to keep our spirits up. She told stories about her childhood, about the time she tried to run away from home at 10, only to get lost in the woods behind her house. I laughed, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying her words from last night. "I can't lose you." By late afternoon, we reached a narrow part of the river where the current slowed. Lily stopped, her eyes scanning the water. "We could try to cross here," she said. "It's shallow enough, and it'll save us time." I looked at the water, my stomach twisting. "Are you sure?" She met my gaze, her expression fierce. "I won't let anything happen to you, Emma. Trust me." I did. I always had. We waded into the river, the cold biting at my legs, and linked arms to keep our balance. Halfway across, my foot slipped and I stumbled, but Lily's grip held me steady. She pulled me close, her arm around my waist, and for a moment we stood there, the water rushing around us, our faces inches apart. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, my breath catching. Her eyes were so close, so intense, and I felt the weight of everything unsaid. "Lily," I said, my voice trembling, "I need to know. What were you going to tell me?" She looked away, her jaw tight. "Not yet," she said, but her hand lingered on my waist, and I felt the truth in her touch. We reached the other side, soaked but safe, and kept moving. By dusk we spotted the ranger station, a small cabin nestled among the trees. The ranger, a grizzled man named Tom, took one look at us and ushered us inside. He gave us dry clothes, hot coffee, and a radio to call for help. As we sat by the cabin's fireplace, Lily finally spoke. "Emma, I've been trying to find the right moment," she said, her voice low. "But there's never a perfect time, is there?" My heart pounded. "Just say it," I whispered. She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto mine. "I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you for years." The words hit me like a tidal wave, and for a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could see was her, the firelight dancing in her eyes, the vulnerability in her face. "Lily," I started, but my voice broke. I wanted to say it back, to tell her I felt the same, but the weight of it, all the years of hiding, the fear of ruining what we had, held me back. Before I could find the words, Tom returned, telling us a rescue team would arrive in the morning. The moment was gone, but Lily's confession hung between us, a promise and a question, as we settled in for the night. The ranger station's cabin was warm, but I felt cold inside, my mind spinning with Lily's words. "I'm in love with you." They echoed in my head as I lay on the cot, staring at the wooden beams above. Lily was asleep across the room, her breathing soft, and I wanted to cross the distance, to tell her I loved her too, but fear was a heavy anchor. Morning came too soon. The rescue team arrived, a pair of rangers with a truck to take us back to civilization. Lily was quiet as we packed up, her eyes avoiding mine. I hated it, the distance between us, but I didn't know how to bridge it. Not yet. The drive back was long, the forest blurring past the windows. Lily sat beside me, her shoulder brushing mine, and every touch felt like a question. When we reached the small town where we'd started our trip, the rangers dropped us at a motel. We checked in, exhausted and filthy, and agreed to rest before figuring out what came next. In our room, Lily sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly. "Emma," she said, her voice low, "I shouldn't have said anything. I didn't mean to mess things up." "You didn't," I said quickly, my heart racing. "You didn't mess anything up." She looked at me, her eyes full of doubt. "Then why do you look like you're about to run?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. She was right, I was terrified. Not of her, but of what loving her meant. I'd spent years building walls, convincing myself I could keep her as my best friend and nothing more. But now, with her confession hanging between us, those walls were crumbling. "I'm scared," I admitted finally, my voice barely audible. I've never let myself feel this way. Not with anyone." Her expression softened and she stood, crossing the room to stand in front of me. "You don't have to be scared," she said. "It's just me." But that was the problem. It was her, the one person I couldn't bear to lose. I took a shaky breath, my hands trembling. What if this changes everything? What if we ruin what we have? She reached out, her hand cupping my cheek, and I leaned into her touch without thinking. "What if it makes everything better?" she whispered. I closed my eyes, her words sinking in. When I opened them, she was still there, her face inches from mine, her eyes full of hope and fear and love. I didn't think, I just acted. I leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid it wasn't real. But then she kissed me back, her hand sliding into my hair, and the world fell away. It was just us, the warmth of her lips, the steadiness of her touch, and I felt something inside me unlock, something I'd kept buried for too long. When we pulled apart, breathless, she rested her forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that for years," she said, her voice trembling. "Me too," I whispered, and the truth of it hit me hard. I'd loved her for so long, and I'd been too afraid to admit it, even to myself. We spent the rest of the day talking, really talking about everything we'd kept hidden. She told me how she'd realized her feelings in college, how she'd tried to move on but couldn't. I told her about the nights I'd lain awake, wondering what it would be like to hold her, to be more than friends. It was raw, messy, and perfect. That night, we lay together in the motel bed, her arm around me, and I felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. But the real world was waiting, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. My family was traditional, and I'd never come out to them. Lily's parents were more open, but she'd faced her own struggles, her own doubts. "We'll figure it out," she said, as if reading my mind. "Together." I nodded, but a part of me still worried. The river had stripped us bare, forced us to face the truth, but the world beyond was full of challenges. I didn't know if we were ready, but I knew I didn't want to face them without her. The motel room felt like a cocoon, a safe space where Lily and I could be us, no pretense, no fear. But morning brought reality crashing in. We had to go back to Portland, to our jobs, our lives, and the people who didn't know the truth about us. I lay in bed watching Lily pack her bag, her movements quick and sure, and I felt a pang of dread. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice small. She turned, her eyes soft but determined. "We keep going," she said. "We figure it out, one step at a time." Her certainty steadied me, but the drive back to Portland was quiet, the weight of the unknown pressing down. When we reached my apartment, she walked me to the door, her hand in mine. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, squeezing my hand. "Okay." I nodded, but my throat was tight. Okay. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We spent every moment we could together, stealing kisses in coffee shops, holding hands under tables. But I was still scared, still hiding. I hadn't told my family, hadn't told anyone except Lily. She was patient, but I could see the hurt in her eyes when I pulled away in public, when I hesitated to call her my girlfriend. One night, over dinner at her place, she set down her fork and looked at me. Emma, I love you. But I can't keep pretending we're just friends. I want to be with you all the way. Her words cut deep, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I was holding back and it was hurting her. I'm trying, I said, my voice breaking. It's just my family. They won't understand. She reached across the table, taking my hand. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here. I took a deep breath and made a decision. The next weekend, I invited my parents over. My hands shook as I told them about Lily, about us. My mom's face went pale and my dad just stared at the floor. You're sure? My mom asked, her voice tight. I've never been more sure, I said, and for the first time I meant it. It wasn't easy. My parents needed time and we had hard conversations, tears, and moments of silence that felt like they'd never end. But Lily was there, holding my hand, reminding me who I was. And slowly my parents started to come around, asking questions, trying to understand. Months later, Lily and I went back to the Deschutes River, not to paddle, but to stand on the same dock where it all began. The water was calm, the air cool, and she wrapped her arms around me from behind, her chin resting on my shoulder. We made it, she whispered. I turned in her arms, looking into her eyes, the same eyes that had pulled me in all those years ago. We did, I said, and I kissed her. Right there in the open, no fear, no hesitation. The river had tested us, stripped us down to our rawest selves, and in its wildness we'd found each other. It wasn't just a try pit, was the start of everything. And as we stood there, the water flowing past, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. Not just as best friends, but as something more, something true. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.